The farm was literally 3 to 4 metres underwater. That was our livelihood underwater.
In 2022, many regions across Australia were affected by severe flooding. For Alex and her family, the breaking of levee banks on the River Murray meant devastation for their farm and their livelihood. But through it all, Alex has proved that hope can be found, even when all seems lost.
Well, I'm a third generation farmer, but I'm a second generation farmer here at Long Flat, a little place just out of Murray Bridge on the Murray River. I am married to my husband Mark, and we have one daughter. We farm sheep and we grow hay. We also farm beef cattle, and we farm here at Long Flat alongside my parents.
Sounds like you've got a very long history here, and I can see why you love it. It's just a beautiful outlook here, just looking over the plains and across the Murray Bridge area. I can only imagine what it would have been like for you 2 years ago.
Yes, so in spring of 2022, Australia experienced high rainfall, which meant there was a lot of flooding throughout New South Wales and Victoria, and all of that water needs to make its way through South Australia and out the Murray mouth. And by the time that January came through, 3 months post the rainfall in New South Wales, we experienced complete inundation in our region. We haven't seen a flood impact in that way since 1956, so well and truly before my time and even my parents' time. And to know and to think that, well, we farm a floodplain, there is obviously a risk of flood, but that hadn't happened for a good 70 odd years. You can become pretty naive to think that, you know, it won't happen to you. And when it did actually happen, the devastation was beyond, you know, our comprehension at the time, and we've been dealing with that for the last 2 years. Natural disasters are horrific things to go through, but it's the days and the weeks and the months after that event that is the hardest part. The morning that we were inundated, we just sort of went into a state of disbelief that our levee bank unfortunately was breached, meaning it burst open, and our farm was inundated within hours. What we noticed the most was the sound. It was a raging, thunderous waterfall.
So you're watching this water just gushing onto your farm and seeing it all covering over. What was your response?
If I think back to that moment, I mean, I was in disbelief that this was actually happening. You were hopeful that this was not going to happen, and we would, all the sort of things that we'd put in place to ensure that it didn't happen, that would be enough. But, you know, it was the what ifs. I remember always thinking, what if, and you couldn't answer those questions because you only had to go through it to be able to find out.
Yeah. So the water's coming all over your property. How high did that get?
So for us here, our farm was 3 to 4 metres of water. So, you know, you think about the height of the ceiling, well, we're well and truly underwater. It's very hard to fathom how much water was on our farm. For us, it was a pivotal time in our business and farming career. That year was hopefully going to be a breakout year for us. And when that happened and the farm was literally 3 to 4 metres underwater, that was our livelihood underwater. We couldn't restore it in a day, and we couldn't remove the water tomorrow and get going and just, you know, fix everything. This was going to be a matter of months, if not years.
So were you cut off for a period of time? Could you get through?
Well, we were isolated here in our house right here because obviously the road was inundated and there's only one way into our farm and out. Thankfully our house was safe because it's high enough, but the road was completely cut. So getting in and out of our property was extremely challenging, including finding new tracks through paddocks and through different gates, and that was just to be able to get out of our property. So it was the isolation and the hardships that came, not because our house was flooded, but because everything around us was. We had prepared, our livestock was safe. We had got our livestock off the flats before the flood in anticipation, because we just didn't want to put ourselves in that position. But we had thousands of sheep in a 30-acre paddock that all didn't have anything to eat. So we were having to hand feed all of our animals and deal with all of that while watching our farm underwater and working out, what are we going to do now? It was exhausting, and you have a myriad of emotions going through your head. You also have to still live life. You still have to put food on the table. You still have to care for those that you need to care for. You still have to pay your bills. You still have to make plans about a business from a business point of view that you can't even function normally. So that's very tiring and exhausting, actually. I remember just feeling that one day I'd be having a really hard day of it, you know, just struggling to get out of bed because it's just so heavy. And then the next day, it would be another member of our family that would be in that position. And we just always had to be constantly rallying around one person each day of the week.
I can understand why that would be challenging too, because you're not only isolated remotely, but you're almost isolated as a community too. But then you did have community rally around you, didn't you?
Initially, we didn't. I think the area that we live in here in the Lower Murray completely went under the radar in terms of the impact it was going to have on the farming community here between Manning and Wellington. And so that initial community rallying wasn't there. And I think I need to bring that up, because for other people that are going through natural disasters or times of devastation, and that initial response is not what you thought it was going to be.
I can only imagine how challenging that would have been even for you in that situation.
It was. I can recall feeling extremely isolated in those early days and weeks, in fact, that there was a lack of understanding outside of what I was going through and what my family was going through, even for my friends to fully not understand what I was going through. The closest people to me didn't fully understand the weight of what it meant to have your farm, your livelihood and your life suffocated by water. It's very hard for others to be able to appreciate that or understand that.
And so looking back over that time in particular, what could have helped? What would have been the best way for you to be supported?
Well, I think the key word is community. And I think through this time of devastation and isolation and just trauma, we have actually come through and understood that our region needs far more community building. And I think that's a key message, is that to bolster resilience and to be ready for the next thing, we need to be bolstering community all the time, because you just never know when you're going to need one another.
Are you more aware of other people in need now, knowing what you went through?
Oh, definitely. I do give thanks for this time, because I know now that without it, I wouldn't have the knowledge and the understandings of natural disaster in particular, and knowing the traumas and the heartache that natural disaster brings to people. Even when I see news around the world, even on global scale, when I see flooding and fire and other types of storm and natural disaster, my heart is in a very different place now than what it would have been prior to my own devastation.
Now, I know you have a very strong faith, and just the hope that you have is just oozing out of you. But in those moments, in the times of trauma and stress, like, where was God?
I am a person of faith, and I've been brought up in the faith my whole life, and I've seen other people go through hard times and other people go through difficulties, and here was my turn. I feel like I didn't need to ask the question, where are you, God? But I did ask, where are you in this? Where are you in this time? Because obviously God is trying to tell us something, or teach us, or guide us, or show him his own power and his own glory. And from a scriptural or biblical standpoint, God speaks about himself in nature and creation and in thunder and in water and the power of water. And then I think about baptism and what that is, and it's going through the waters from old to new. And I will sit in that space, especially in our time through the flood, and think, wow, this is a time of renewal where God is literally just flooding us with his weight of his glory, and he's going to be bringing us out the other side. But it doesn't mean that it's pretty, and it doesn't mean that it's easy, and it doesn't mean that it's just all lovely and rosy. It actually hurts.
So take us through the next phase of the flood.
It was a matter of months that the water receded, and with that we saw the devastation of, as I said, our trees and our pastures. But obviously we then found the impact of all the other things that had happened. So all of our fences were completely destroyed. All of our infrastructure that we had on the farm was rusted, and we've had to start again. All the little things that we weren't expecting that actually become huge things. They become huge, impactful things, yeah. The fast nature and fast pace of our life and business and what we've been through in terms of the devastation and trauma, there's this sense of always wanting to be on this wheel that just keeps turning and turning and turning. And each night we say, be still, stop striving, stop working, stop trying to solve the problem, and surrender and know that God is in charge. And that really helps us at the end of each day to sort of let go and be restored for the next day of, no doubt, challenges.
So in all that you have experienced, can you tell me, what do you think this has taught you as a person?
Life doesn't stop for anything. When even a natural disaster, things don't just simply go away and you've just got to deal with that. It's always complex and multi-layered, like that's what life is. Yeah, at the same time that we were going through this time of devastation, my husband's dad found out he was dying from brain cancer. He lives in Victoria and we're in South Australia, and there's a distance between us, and we were held ransom because we were completely inundated and flooded and we couldn't leave. And we had to go through that time, and unfortunately, yeah, Mark's dad passed away, and it was like, oh, there's another punch, there's another hit. What else, you know, you do ask that question, what else could go wrong, sort of thing. And yeah, it was just a season of hardship for us and our family.
What held you together?
Well, I can only say that it's by faith that, for me, that is the only thing that held me together. Knowing that I didn't have to do this on my own, and I did not have to do this and rely on my own strength, because simply just I didn't have the strength. You know, there isn't enough human strength to be able to deal with these pressures and these issues. And it's relying on God's next step. And I just remember just feeling like, yeah, what's next, God? And stepping into some of the things that I believe He called me into, especially about community and bringing community together, because I knew that I needed the community.
So how did that look for you with community?
Yeah, so we made a community call out for our people impacted by flood to come together, allow people to share their experiences, and out of that was born another group of community, the women of our region, gathering to support one another and navigate this journey together. And that has been a beautiful flower that's blossomed out of this time. I do believe that the flood has taught us very quickly that we need to be prepared all the time. Already 2 years later, we've gone from a time of flood, and South Australia's just experienced its driest time in record. So that's a very short time frame and turnaround. We've gone from flood to drought. And so our willingness to be, you know, to flex our resilience muscle just a little bit more is there, has to be there. So bringing in a sense of flexibility and a plan, I think that's a key element.
So for somebody who has experienced something similar to you, what is the best piece of information you can give them to give them some sense of hope or resilience?
I think sometimes we try and make it sound like, oh, all you got to do is, trust and she'll be right. That's very hard to do. It's very hard to do. So I think it's like putting a sense of realism on what you're going through. So this is real. This is really happening to me. This is something that I have to go through, and I just have to take it one day at a time, but not sort of think that, well, I'm not getting anywhere and this is not really working for me, so I must be failing, because that happened to me a lot. Like, when are we going to get through this? When is this ever going to be okay? I think the most important thing when going through natural disaster and navigating the trauma and the pressures of natural disaster is to know that you will get through it and that there will be a brighter day, and there will be a day that you will no longer be defined by that disaster.